Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? So I've got a new camera set up. Hoping this will be a lot better for you guys when I do my videos. So yeah, uh, today I'm going to be talking about my picks for the best X-Men run that I have read. As you know, X-Men's been a big thing lately, especially with Days of Future Past coming out. And if you haven't seen it, go see it. I recommend you check it out. It's probably the best X-Men movie that's been put out, and I am in the opinion that it's almost as good as Winter Soldier. Kind of go back and forth with it. Um, so yeah, first things first. My picks for the best X-Men stories that you should read. I'm gonna go with the ones that I don't have first. I don't have with me at the moment um, X-Men, the story with Wolverine and the Adamantium story where he's in Japan, which is written by Chris Claremont and it's just called Wolverine. Um, Definitely pick that up if you haven't. It's definitely a great story. I recommend it. The other one is God Loves Man Kills. God Loves Man Kills is one of the most, at the time, controversial X-Men stories because it ends with such a bang. You're like, wow, it's freaking crazy. I love it. Um, but you're not here for that. You're here for the ones that I have on me right now and to check them out. So, let's get right to it. The first one that I'm going to recommend you pick up is the Chris Claremont Uncanny X-Men Omnibus. This is the start of Chris Claremont's run on the series, which, if you've never heard of Chris Claremont, he basically, at the time, this was in the 70s, revolutionized the X-Men. Now, there is also a run he did with Jim Lee in the 90s, and there's an omnibus about that. Do not be fooled. That one's not as good, unfortunately. I would recommend you avoid that. Just pick up the 1970s omnibuses that you can get. You can tell a difference because it'll say Uncanny X-Men, Chris Claremont, and Byrne Cochran. Yeah. Chris Claremont at the time revolutionized the X-Men by taking them in a new direction along with John Byrne. John Byrne was a big part of this as well. He introduced a lot of characters like Rogue, Gambit, and things like that. Sabretooth, they come in later on in the series. Um, Not only that, but in Volume 1, you get the start, if I am not mistaken, of the Phoenix Saga. So, for those of you that are interested in the Phoenix Saga, this is where it starts. Chris Claremont right here, he started it, and definitely pick this up. The art is good. If you've known anything like the 70s dialogue, it's a little bit wordy and things like that, but Chris Claremont really took this series in a new direction, and he introduced a lot more female characters and made them stronger characters. There is some debate about, his proclivities and fetishes towards bonding, and if you kind of know about that, it's kind of interwoven in some of the stories. You can kind of tell. So, but great stories nonetheless. So once you finish that one, you should pick up Chris Claremont, Uncanny X-Men, The Omnibus, Volume 2. So, Volume 2 is really where he starts to hit his stride, because this is where you get the Dark Phoenix saga. This is where you get the story of Jean Grey and how she's battling with the Phoenix and everything like that, and the decision that the X-Men must come to fight her. Also, you get the story of Days of Future Past here. So you get it in here as well. So this is actually a very good pickup if you can afford it. I think it's going for like 70, 80 bucks on Amazon. It's not too bad, but you get Days of Future Past, you get Uncanny X-Men, Days of Future Past, and you get the Dark Phoenix saga in here. Pretty good pickup. Now you're going to see Days of Future Past as a separate hardcover that Marvel's putting out, a deluxe oversized edition. You can get that. However, I kind of would advise against it because it's got a bunch of the spare stories and some of the extra stories really aren't worth the buy. It's kind of worthless. So, I would advise you get this instead. Has it in here, you get a lot of great stories and you get Chris Claremont's run. So, definitely recommend you pick that up. Moving on. So, we're going to jump in time a little bit now, and we are going to go to about the early 2000s, late 90s. At the time, the X-Men were kind of floundering a little bit. Marvel was coming out of the 90s and things like that. So Marvel decided it's time to shake up the X-Men. Let's bring them into a new generation. Let's introduce them to a new audience and things like that. Let's kind of hardcore them up a little bit. So the first X-Men movie was coming out. So what they did was they hired Grant Crazy Pants Morrison to write the X-Men story. So, bam, you get all new X-Men. And at the time, it came out and people were a little bit shocked at the direction they were taking. And they dumped the uniforms. They kind of went with more leather and black jackets and things like that. Grant Morrison's X-Men run, to me, is one of the best X-Men runs ever. It's very controversial, and the ending doesn't stick well with a lot of people, understandably so. So, you can find the Ultimate Collections. Bam. There's 3 of them. And Grant Morrison, to me, he changed a lot of things. He introduced new characters. He made the school feel like it's an actual school. He introduces a special class with kids that are more troubled and things like that. And he introduces a lot more mutants that they are not pretty mutants. They are not the, Jean Greys or the Scott Summers of the school where they are these beautiful looking people. He changed it up a lot, really. He shook the core foundation up. And I think he writes great characters. I really do. Now, a lot of people will disagree with me on that. That's perfectly fine. I understand. Grant Morrison's run is not for everybody. But at the end of it, spoilers, if you haven't read Grant Morrison's run, you might want to skip this video a little bit farther down the line. He kills, spoilers again, I'm not going to say it. Okay. He kills Jean Grey. And that is something that has stuck to this day. Now, they brought her back in different incarnations, but the Jean Grey is dead after this run, and it's stuck to this day. So it's a lasting run. It's had a lot of impact. He introduces a villain called Cassandra Cain, which to this day also has a lasting impact in the series. So you get that in here. The art, he teams up with Frank Quietly on a lot of this, and I think the Frank Quietly stuff, if you've ever seen his art style, it is great. I love Frank Quietly. Great stuff, but it's not for everybody. His faces are a little bit weird for some people. They don't like it as much, but hey. So yeah, that's the Ultimate Collection Volume 1. Pick that up. After reading the first chapter of Ultimate Collection Volume 1, you probably want to keep reading it because Grant Morrison starts off this series with pretty much a bang because he commits basically mutant genocide in the series, and you'll see what I mean when you see it. It's pretty crazy. So that is the Ultimate Collection Volume 2 right there. And Volume 3. So that'll give you the whole series right there of Volume 3. Here's the thing about this as well. There are debates about the last of one of the characters and his motivations, and if it was him or if it wasn't in the series. And once you get to a big reveal of who that character is, you'll be like, well, I don't know if it'll make sense, but later they kind of retconned it out. So that part, a lot of this still has weight. So yeah, I can't really talk in detail. I don't want to spoil it for you because it was spoiled for me, and when it was spoiled for me, I was mad. So, next run we are going to is Joss Whedon. Yes, the Joss Whedon, the one who has written the Avengers, the movie The Avengers, of course. Joss Whedon had a run with John Cassaday in the late 2000s. I'm not exactly sure on that year. Don't quote me on that. But Joss Whedon, he took over the run, and this is kind of the spiritual successor to Grant Morrison's New X-Men. So if you've read Grant Morrison's I would say read Grant Morrison's New X-Men run first, and then jump into Joss Whedon's. Or you could jump into Joss Whedon's run, you'd be perfectly fine, but a lot of stuff does carry over from the Morrison run into here, Cassandra Cain being one of them, the villains from that series. So, you've got Joss Whedon's run. This is the Ultimate Collection. It's called Astonishing X-Men, and it's written by Joss Whedon, and the art is John Cassaday. If you have never seen John Cassaday's art, you are missing out. Cassaday kills it on art in this series. And I remember when it was coming out, it was delayed a lot, but people really didn't mind it as much because Cassaday's art is fantastic. It's amazing stuff. Details, beautiful colors. Oh my gosh, I love his art in this series. If you've ever read anything by Joss Whedon or seen his TV show, it has the typical quips, it has the typical dialogue and things like that. It's sharp, it's great, it's written well. You should definitely check it out. He writes, to me, the best Kitty Pryde ever. Kitty Pryde at the end of this is amazing. He writes a great character. He nails Scott Summers. I think he writes him perfectly. I think he's dead on with Scott Summers, and I haven't written a run yet where they just nail it dead on like that. I think it's fantastic. He just got it perfectly. It ends in such a grand fashion. You're gonna be left going, "Oh my gosh!" But definitely pick this up after you're done. It includes these stories where there is a mutant cure. So yeah, that includes the story in here, and then that kind of carries on throughout the whole series. If you saw X-Men: The Last Stand, and if you were lucky enough to have that movie bleached from the back of your brain, like me, then that storyline that they tried to do in X-Men: Last Stand came from here. But it's actually really well written here, and it has great characters and things like that if you've read anything by Joss Whedon. So, bam. Uncanny X-Men, right there. And that's volume 1, and that's volume 2. And this will give you the whole Whedon series. So you don't have to go out and spend so much money on the omnibus. You can get those. You'll be perfectly fine. My last pick for my top favorite runs on X-Men is one that came out just a few years ago, and it is written by one Rick Remender, and it's done by Jerome Opeña. Okay, in the 90s, the X-Men were going through what is now coined as the hardcore phase. You know, you had writers and things like that, like Rob Liefeld, that they were putting out hardcore books for the audiences that wanted the blood and the massacre and pockets and no shoes and no feet. But that was Rob Liefeld, and we've moved on from that genocide, thankfully. So, we've come to what is now Uncanny XForce. Uncanny XForce, and they have an omnibus out that you could pick it up for probably cheaper than you can get the hardcovers. The hardcovers are fetching for a good amount of price because they sold out quick. But I recommend you check out the hardcover. It's going out of the omnibus. Excuse me. It's going out of print fast. So if you are holding out on it, I really recommend you look into getting that soon because it is such a popular run. Getting into it. Okay, Uncanny X-Force. So basically, it starts out with the X-Force team, as you know it, is a hit squad. They are the members of the X-Men team that they will kill. Because they have to, because there are some targets in the world that require a little bit more strategy and a little bit more blood than the other teams. So basically at the time, Cyclops decided, hey, we can't keep this going. You know, it's just a public nightmare if it got out that we have a hit squad out. And what Wolverine says, oh yeah, don't worry about it, we'll shut it down. And then Wolverine goes to his group and they go, we're not shutting this down, are we? And Wolverine goes, oh, hell no. No, we're not shutting this down. There are some people that need to just die. And he decides to lead a squad that is composed of Archangel, Psylocke, Deadpool, and Phantom X. Phantom X is awesome. They nail him. He is so great in this series. I love Phantom X. Perhaps the biggest surprise in this series for me is Deadpool. Deadpool is actually the heart of the team. Now, when Deadpool is the heart of your team, that's when you have a really messed up group of characters. And if you know anything about Rick Remender, he does a great job on characters that have dark stories. And I'm running a little bit long in this, but so it starts out with the Apocalypse Solution, and Wolverine basically he sends out Deadpool as his scout to find out these missions and these dark areas of the universe that these people need to die because they are doing some dark stuff. And basically, Apocalypse is coming back. Now, they are on their way to kill Apocalypse before he even comes back into power. So it kind of deals with that preemptive strike. How would you handle a situation where something isn't necessarily evil just yet, but he's going to be a force later on in the future? After you read the first issue of this, you should be hooked because you find out the state that Apocalypse is in and you go, oh my gosh, are they really going to go that far and do what they have to do? I'm really speaking in terms with this, but it's an amazing run. Oh my gosh, I love Uncanny X-Force. And the decisions that happen after the first trade dovetail out into the rest of the series. The only slump that I would say is that it has an arc called, I think it's Otherworld. It's been a while since I've read it. The Otherworld arc. and that kind of petered out a little bit, and then it bounces back once it hits Dark Angel Saga. Once it hits Dark Angel Saga, which is in these trades, it skyrockets to another level. I mean, Remender was firing all cylinders. He does art with Rafael Albuquerque from American Vampire. Jeromo Pena is in this. Jeromo Pena kills it on art in this series. It is amazing. So the first trade, the Apocalypse Solution. Definitely pick this up if you have not. He writes great characters. The Dark Angel Saga is amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So you have Archangel, Psylocke, Wolverine, Phantom X, and of course Deadpool. And Deadpool is hilarious in this series because they use him sparingly. They use him the right way you should use Deadpool. He's better off in a team, and he's better off sparingly. And then you get Deathlock Nation. Otherworld. The Dark Angel Saga, Book 1. Dark Angel Saga, Book 2. And Final Execution, Book 1. And Final Execution, Book 2. Again, there's an omnibus of this. You can get it for about $70 around there, I think. And it's highly recommend you pick this up. This is great stuff. Now, if you finish this run, Rick Remender's actually keeping the run going in some fashion. A lot of it carries over into his Uncanny Avengers run that he's got going on right now. Pick that up as well. It's great stuff. I recommend you check it out. So, sorry for the long video. Hope this helps. Comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thanks. Bye.